Welcome back to another unhinged rant about AOTP. At the end of my recent colored tier list series, I received a request from a user by the name of Ray O'Connell, begging and pleading with me to make a full tier list. In benevolence, I decided to go along with his request, to an extent. The AOTP squad of users on Discord caught wind of this early, and join us if you haven't already, links are in the description. I'm using TierMaker to make 3 separate videos to rank each of the primary army components in AOTP against each other. One video to compare all the Planeswalkers, one to compare all of the creatures, and one video to compare all of the spells. You may also find links to my TierMaker templates in the description below. Feel free to make a list for yourself and share with us on the Discord. I'm going to use the same general ranking metrics as I did for my colored tier list series. These entities will score higher in my tier list, mostly based on their contribution in a 1v1 AOTP game where the goal is to slay either the enemy Planeswalker or their entire army, while playing on an AOTP map or relatively competitive Heroescape map. 2v2s and their performance in the official AOTP scenarios will also play a part in how I rank things, but those will have less weight in Final Judgment. So here we are with our TierMaker list. So we're going to start off at the very top of the MTG color circle. We're going to go from white. We're going to go around to what's next: blue, black, green, or sorry, red, and then green. As you can see at the very bottom, I've ordered them pretty much in that order. I'll say what I'm considering when ranking the Planeswalkers: how good the figure themselves is, and then how good their mix of colors are. And by mix of colors, I mean what can their creatures offer for them or do for them, and what can their spells offer them or do for them. Our first victim, in case you couldn't already tell from the tier list here, our first victim is Gideon. He's trash tier. It's really just, it's unfortunate. I don't like white very much as a color. White offers very little range. They have the hookers, range 3. White spells are honestly kind of junk. I think AOTP and also Heroescape, you generally want to be taking the offensive, to be killing your opponent's figures so that they're not taking higher activations against you in retaliation. So like if I have a 3-man squad and you have a 3-man squad, if I can use my turn to potentially kill 1 or 2 of your squaddies, that means on your turn you can only attack with 1 or 2 squaddies. Where what white generally does is say, I have a 3-man squad, let's give them all +2 defense dice. And it's like, okay. It's like all that does is slightly reduce your odds of killing my squad. But it still feels likely that white's opponents will kill their figures faster than white can kill their opponents. And Gideon as a standalone figure, just... yeah, 5 toughness is like, okay, like that's a decent selling point. Counter-Strike is fun, not reliable. Gideon's range of 1 isn't helping. Like if Gideon had like a range of like 5 or 6, I feel like he would be kind of formidable, although his Avatar of Justice would be harder to use in that case. But still, the fact that he has only a range of 1 means, yeah, him trying to contribute directly to the fight with 6 life is also just terrible. There's a lot of ways I guess I would have attempted to rebalance him or fix him if I was given the choice. I think any mix of giving him a range of like 4 or 5, maybe like Nahiri or Chandra, maybe giving him 1 more life and or 1 more toughness would have also gone quite a ways. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say. I'm just not a fan of Gideon. White is not a very good color, and Gideon really doesn't add a whole lot to white. Next, we got Sorin, white-black Planeswalker. I put him somewhere between decent and good. I'm probably going to say good. I think he's better than the average Planeswalker. Generally, I think Not Forgotten and Stone Will, those are 2 Planeswalker enchantments. Those 2 existing along with him having the multi-attack ability, there's a Blade Master and then Vampiric Thirst, which can heal him. I think the combination of those 4 items alone make him pretty good. He's very good for cleanup, especially. He can clean up, he can very easily clean up an endgame where things are damaged, you know, things have relative, like, medium to high damage, so that he can come in with his big attack, and potentially even bigger than his base 5 attack, and start slaughtering things. And, you know, healing 2 damage per kill is pretty significant in my opinion. And, I mean, so that's him, that's just him. Now, his mix of black and white, I would say is, I do think black and white are the worst colors in AOTP, but he has a, I would say he has a pretty significant melee heavy, like, that he can summon, like Ruiner, Evasian, and Core Aeronaut Captain. And, like, when you have Sorin plus, like, 1 or 2 of those other big heroes coming at you, like, as the opponent, that's a lot of scary offensive pressure, especially when Evasian and the Core Captain have flying. Core Captain is, I'm finding out in my recent games and playtests, Core Captain is pretty menacing when he gets just like 1 or 2 bonus power, and he can get adjacent to an opposing Planeswalker. Like 7 to 8 attack dice can really hurt even with average rolls. Like you roll 4 hits, 5 hits, you can kill a lot of Planeswalkers in 2 turns. I'm trying to warm up to Black's Harrowing Journey and Corpse Lunge, which I've liked Corpse Lunge enough, but Harrowing Journey combined with Corpse Lunge, you're giving one of your heroes an additional +3 move, and then they get double attack. So like you combine those 2 with pretty much any other power buff from white, like you got Tenacity, Chaplain's Blessing, even Inspired Charge would be worth it at that point, despite Inspired Charge kind of, you know, saying like all of your creatures get +2 power. Inspired Charge is good for a double attacking hero. Like, I think the slight lack of range between white and black probably keeps Sorin from being top tier. Other colors, or basically the opponent's ability to burst down Sorin, is a real thing when he has 6 life and 4 toughness. Yeah, so I would say he's slightly fragile to burst assassination, which I would say red and green are especially good at assassinating, like a single beefy figure, and that the lack of range keeps him from being top tier. Moving on, we got Nahiri, white and red. It's really hard to rank dual color Planeswalkers anything less than good. Yeah, I think I would put Nahiri slightly below Sorin. I would say that my number 1 reason being that Nahiri seems slightly more defensive than Sorin, like slightly more passive therefore. She herself, now not the colors red and white, but rather she herself, like when she has like her ability to build her own high ground, and then she gets +2 toughness while on high ground. I very often will summon things and then walk her forward and just build her up on high ground and leave her on high ground relatively asleep while using her squads to attack things. Her range is weak at 4, which isn't helping a lot. It's decent, like it makes her decent for when she's fighting against somebody like Sorin, in that like she's always going to be maintaining high ground. Like fighting through her 7 life, 6 toughness with melee figures is on occasion really tough. Sorin, though, he has the ability to inflict some serious damage, at least his heroes do, when they're rolling like 8+ attack dice, and that can, like just one unlucky defense roll can really cause a Nahiri to die quickly. And that has happened to me enough, which is why I don't want to put her higher than Sorin. And Nahiri's lacking a little bit of the black healing, which would otherwise probably help her. Like if Nahiri was black-white, I think she might be better. Because unfortunately red doesn't offer any Planeswalker sustain, and white only offers it in near-death experience. So, like Nahiri, kind of, her card and her figure itself, I think it's inclined to play a kind of a slow, long game, at least herself again. But her colors don't entirely incentivize that, other than white's near-death experience. She's not terrible by any means. She's just kind of weak offensively. Alright, and as far as white and red combined, I think it's in a pretty similar boat to like Sorin and like white-black, in that it's just generally going to be melee heavy, but red offers a little more movement. So I think for the most part, Nahiri does the squads thing better because she can help mobilize her squads. But she can do the same similar thing as Sorin does with squads, where like you can play Not Forgotten on her, and then it's a little bit harder to deal with her because she's much harder to burst down than Sorin is. That like you can effectively protect your squads with Not Forgotten by putting Nahiri next to them after you summon them, and then your opponent has to make a choice to try and fight through Nahiri's massive HP and generally her high toughness pool, as long as you can keep her on high ground, or you can kill her squads and then buff her, and you give her buffs, like you give her 2 or 3 power counters. That is when she can become terrifying, because now you're dealing with a 7 life, 6 toughness, and like 6 power figure who's gonna be, yeah, like she can start one-shotting things. So white and red, like you get access to Blazing Firecats, Mad Prophet. I like them a lot. You can sort of buff the Mad Prophet with a lot of the same white hero buffs as like you could with Sorin, and he becomes a pretty decent Planeswalker assassin, although a little bit slow because he doesn't have flying. Altogether, I think Nahiri is pretty good. I think kind of a similar fate to Sorin in that her slight lack of range and like white and red kind of lacking their offering in range kind of keeps her from top tier, and I think also her low base offense and then her more defensive nature as a figure. It is good as a Planeswalker to have like a bulky Planeswalker figure that is hard to kill in general, but her low offense makes her not super good at cleanup unless you can, you're successful in using Not Forgotten and even Stonewill. Alright, next up we got Jace Beleren. This is the first iteration of Jace. I'm probably gonna put him top tier. So first iteration of Jace, Jace Beleren Mind Mage from AOTP, just the base set, the original set that started the whole legend. The stats alone, let's just talk about the figure. The stats alone are just obscene on this guy for him costing 340. Him and Chandra's like point cost, I think Chandra was like 360 or 365. He could easily cost 360 and he would still be really good. I don't get what they were thinking with him, but 7 range and 5 power is enough to make this guy like super powerful. You never feel bad taking a turn with him. Rarely feel bad. How about that? Like if you can roll at least 5 dice, if not 6 with high ground, you're often getting some work done with him. Focus thoughts to not mill, to scry, I guess, to scrying your deck to look at the top card and decide if you want it on the top of the deck or the bottom. It just improves his consistency, like in every matchup. So you can feed yourself your best cards much more quickly than pretty much any other color, maybe bar black. And what's his other one? Mind Stealer. Mind Stealer is kind of it's a little too random for me to want to intentionally use it. Like most games, I'm going to use him at full range, like 6 or 7 spaces. Mind Stealer requires you to end your turn within 4 spaces of an enemy Planeswalker. It's a very risky to use early. Like if you succeed with it in like the first like 3-4 turns of the game, yeah, it's excellent in that you can now move their Planeswalker away from the high ground into water, yada yada, such that like your opponent is going to be quite inclined to get their Planeswalker, like to take their next turn with their Planeswalker, to get their Planeswalker back to a better defensive position, instead of sitting on like level 1 or level 0 in water, where Jace's figures can probably very easily surround them and kill them with a bunch of high ground attacks. It's like a multi-dimensional thing where it's like, if you fail it, then the problem is, right, their Planeswalker's right next to you, within 4 of you. They could potentially, again, you gotta pay attention to the enemy summoning reserves, but they could potentially summon figures all directly on top of Jace and put you in a ton of engagements. It opens the door to, yes, it's very risky early on, but it's like if you fail that, it could really backfire, and if you succeeded, it could also like really put you ahead in some cases. But then towards the end game, Mind Stealer's potential weakens a bit. Generally, once all creatures and all that are dead, like most of the time, you and your opponent are almost always taking turns with your Planeswalkers. So it's like if you Mind Steal their Planeswalker, walk them into the low ground, their next turn they're probably taking the turn with their Planeswalker anyway. So they're just gonna move them back to wherever they were before and probably attack you again. They're not inclined to like try and take a turn with their squad. Why would they take a turn with a squad that has maybe 1 or 2 figures left? All right, we've gone long enough about Jace though. Mind Stealer is great. He's really like there's basically no flaw with this guy except for his toughness, which is still like 3 is kind of low. I want to say he ties with who? Arlinn in human form and Liliana. Yeah, his major flaw is his toughness, but It's not a terrible flaw. Like 3 is still not that bad, all things considered. So blue as a color is also pretty good. He gets tons of mobility, project self, illusionary deception from the projections. You get like all the counter spells. You get misdirection. Like blue just offers almost everything except for power buffs and toughness buffs. You even get Royal Mage's Trick and Twisted Image for your Leyline Phantoms too. So they're not completely lacking in power, but they're a little bit low. Lantern Geists are just really annoying, and also supplement your activations with Jace because you can flicker them, resummon them. Illusionary projections help again with consistency in that like you just summon them and you get to draw a card. And their teleportation is great. Leyline Phantoms, Twisted Image is great. They have 5 toughness, which is just insane to fight through when there's 3 of them especially. The heroes are okay. I'm not a huge fan of the Royal Mage. Necro Alchemist is decent enough. He's really similar in stats to Jace, like other than the minus range. The lesser range, I should say. But like if you take the Necro Alchemist abilities away and like just effectively pretend that he has 5 power, he's basically Jace without abilities. Blue has everything they need. They got the beefy Lantern Geists and Leyline Phantoms as like frontliners, and they have a bunch of ranged figures who can hide behind their beefy squads and just start shooting for big damage. Really no massive complaints here, like just good. Now, on to who I call shitty Jace very often. Shadows over Innistrad Jace, Jace Investigator. He's just, yeah, he has all the same boons of being blue as the good Jace does. We'll talk specifically about his figure and why I think he's just so much worse because of it. He's somewhere between decent and poor. I'm gonna put him in poor, but like high poor tier. And it's mostly because of the figure itself. There's basically no reason to use this guy over the good Jace. This dude is better in every single way except for toughness. Jace Investigator has 4 toughness, where Jace Beleren has 3 toughness. Literally every stat but toughness is 1 lower than good Jace, than the first Jace. His abilities. So Wealth of Knowledge is pretty decent. Like, I'm not going to complain. Like an ability that just says you get, is 25 more points? It's either 20 or 25 more points into your spell deck. You really can't complain when blue has a lot of really good spells. So I'm never going to knock Wealth of Knowledge. Good ability. Every single time you're going to get value from it because you just add better cards to your deck. Now the other one though, frickin' Search for Answers is just completely, I can't. It's very hard to use. So I mean, number one, you're going to have to put the Lantern Geists in, but that's like not even a con. Lantern Geists are super powerful to begin with. You have to include this great figure in your army anyway, so I'm not going to call that a con. But you, like, if the Geists get destroyed, let's say, or like you just don't feel like summoning them for some reason, you have to wait to use Search for Answers, or like you just declare the name of a card and hope you get really freaking lucky somehow without looking at what that card was, via pieces of the puzzle or Eerie Observation. So it's like, even if you go to use Search for Answers, that spell, like let's say we pop Seize the Day off of like an opponent's red deck. We use Eerie Observation, we say, oh, it's Seize the Day. Jace would love to play that card, sure. The problem is, Seize the Day says that you have a red creature you control. Jace doesn't have a red creature. So it's like, as much as he would love to use Seize the Day, he has no red creature to use it on, so it's worthless. Same thing with like Bountiful Harvest, Green's Bountiful Harvest, which I think it says you can heal 3 damage off of a friendly green planeswalker. It's like, that's good for every green planeswalker, but it's like, if I'm Jace and then I look at the top of my opponent's deck, I can't Search for Answers on Bountiful Harvest because I don't have a green planeswalker to heal 3 damage from. There's too many spells. Moral of the story is, there's too many spells that say, like, do this if you have a white planeswalker, or if you have a green planeswalker, or if you have a red creature or a black creature, etc. Since Jace is mono blue, it's just, he can't make good use of Search for Answers. That's just one more problem where I'm like, I don't like this guy. There's almost nothing that he stands out that like that good Jace can't already do, and just like a million times better. Enough of shitty Jace. Moving on to Kiora. She's going top tier. Absolutely. Like, she's She's actually quite similar in stats to Shitty Jace, but she has access to green, which in my opinion is the best color. It's kind of hard to place her anything below good, but I think she's pretty top tier in general. I'm gonna put her just below Super Jace, because I think Super Jace is slightly better. Carried by Waves, like just free moving one of your squad's 4 spaces every time at the start of your turn with Kiora is really freaking good in my opinion. Like you can go and occupy a glyph. Like you can split across the map and like grab glyphs or grab other objectives in objective-based games, like across the map, where it's like you can very easily make your opponent have to deal with 2 fronts. It's very interesting using her. Her Bite and Nefasa is pretty good. It's a kind of like Focus Thoughts, but she has to end her turn in a water move, or in a water space, I'm sorry. That is slightly alleviated by Seaborn, in that like she gets, is it Seaborn? Whatever the ability is called, where she gets +2 toughness while in water. So it doesn't feel quite as bad leaving her in water, but it's still, I don't think it's ideal. If you can get her on a water space, like on your first move of the game, which oftentimes I think you can, especially if you're going first, it's usually free, honestly, to just take your first move, jump in water, use Bite and Nefasa, take the top 2 cards of your deck, and then like take the more powerful one. Like it's basically a free draw. But yeah, then the other ability that I briefly mentioned, Seaborn, it's okay. But the combination of blue and green is just super good. Like, blue and green are my top 2 colors. Mixing them is just no-brainer. You get Essence Flux, you get Ghostly Wings, you have the hero support, Earthen Arms, Royal Mage's Trick. Like, you can make heroes work with her. You can make squads work with her because you get Overrun, Titanic Growth, Twisted Image, Welcome to the Fold. She can almost do anything she wants with her builds. She gets all the blue teleportation and counterspell shenanigans. She gets all of the green like buffs and heals. Bountiful Harvest to help keep her alive. Her offense is slightly weak, but you get like Leaf Arrow on her. Predatory Strike, you get Groundswell. You can make her work as a standalone figure in like a Planeswalker-centric build too. She only slightly lacks the insane stats. Like if she had Jace Beleren stats, she would be off the rails powerful. She could do everything. She could make a squad-centric, she can make a hero-centric, she can even do Planeswalker-centric. You can do whatever you want with her, and you have the spells. Like you can build the deck and creatures to support whatever you want to go for. It's so freaking cool. Alright, we're on to black. Time to move on. Miss Liliana. I think I'm going to put her on the low end of good. So black as a mono color, yeah, I don't think is very good, unfortunately. I think I've already mentioned it multiple times now, but black and white, I think white is the worst color. I don't think black is very far from being the worst color though. It's like black and white are way down here. Red's a pretty good step up, and then blue and green I think are another significant step up. So Liliana for black, she's absolutely like a key figure. Like her being the only ranged black figure of all the black figures is kind of like the biggest selling point for her just by itself. And since she's a Planeswalker, you like your Planeswalkers to be able to stay at range and to remain out of the melee fight generally. Her having the range is extremely useful for a color that just doesn't have range and rather sucky move in general. Snuff Out is really good, at least in any game that contains opposing squads. It's unfortunate Snuff Out sucks and does nothing against heroes. As far as heroes, she is lucky that she has access to Restless Zombies and Bone Splinters. Bone Splinters is #1. Like, Liliana needs Bone Splinters in every single build because she can't. She doesn't really have a lot of great ways to deal with heroes. Bladed Reavers can help with that, but her zombie toughness, like she just lends herself to zombie tribals anyway. So it's like, use her, use the Reavers, use the Restless Zombies, you got your 500 point army. Go Ghoul Vanguard if you need 600. She's like, her builds are kind of set in stone. And then you got stuff like your Killing Wave, which deals damage to all the non-zombies, all the non-zombie squads. So it's like, her Killing Wave is completely free because she can never kill her own zombies with it. 7 life, 3 toughness, so she's pretty much the same survivability as Super Jace, which is not terrible. It really isn't terrible. Her 4 power it's a little bit lacking, but not terrible. Like 4 power is very average. Restless Zombies are just really good at powering black spells. And since Liliana is also a pretty good Planeswalker to take turns with to re-roll Darkness Arises, to keep regenerating them, to throw them at your opponent, to sacrifice them for Painful Truths, Altar's Reap, even sometimes Dark Harvest. It's hard to rank her anything below decent for sure, so I'm pretty happy with kind of low good tier. The Flying Demon himself is next, Nixilis. I think I'm going to put him decent. Probably mid to high decent. He's a lot of fun. He's probably my favorite Planeswalker to play. It's just, he has a lot of struggles. Being a range 1 Planeswalker, kind of like Gideon, I think he shares quite a bit in like the weaknesses that Gideon has. Like being range 1 only, the color, just like black, the color itself, not offering range, hurts him kind of just like white hurts Gideon. Alright, let's talk about Nixilis himself. Flying on a 6-move Planeswalker is really good. And like any map, like any Heroescape map, this guy is he's going to claim high ground without an issue. I don't think there's any downside to a Planeswalker having flying, in that like he's not affected by, oh, what's that green spell? Sky Reaping? Which says it deals damage, 1 damage to flying creatures. He's immune to Sky Reaping. He's also immune to Pyroclasm, which says it deals damage to figures that don't have flying. He's the only Planeswalker immune to Pyroclasm, which is a minor point, but still a point. Flying is pretty much just nothing but positive for this guy. It's great. It helps him keep on high ground. Like he gets high ground on the attack. He's a menace. At any price is really like he's lucky he's black and he's got Restless Zombies just for this point, but at any price, like you can slaughter your own Restless Zombies to draw an additional card. Like you're skimming through your deck very quickly with him. Summon zombies first turn, kill one of them with at any price, fly forward, attack one of your zombies to kill it. If you have Painful Truths, you can kill the 3rd zombie with Painful Truths, and then on your 2nd turn you can play, or you can roll for Darkness Arises immediately. Like on your 2nd turn, you're already rolling for Darkness Arises, which could resummon the zombies for free on your 2nd turn. I mean, it's not summoning, but you place them back on the battlefield. But then you can also summon 2 more squads or 2 more army cards with Ob, such that like if you're playing a larger point game like 600 to 650, you can really put the zombies out and then summon 2 more squads and like have this massive front of just like 7+ figures, like in the middle of the battlefield, more than likely, because he flew 6 spaces on the 1st turn. Like he could potentially have his entire army on the battlefield in the middle on the 2nd turn of the game. There's a lot of shenanigans with at any price. Not only to murder your opponent's squads, especially in the end game when your opponent has no deck left to draw from. Like at any price is just free squad kill every turn, which is wonderful at that point. Well, he doesn't do zombie tribal like Liliana does, so he lacks that. He also doesn't have the range. So in general, I think his creatures, given his, how expensive he is, his creatures generally are on like they're on like a backup role. Like again, I like the zombies because it's like all I want them to do is die. I don't care about what zombies are going to contribute other than they heal Ob, they let me draw more cards, and they block so the opponent isn't killing Ob. But the Reavers are so expensive that it's going to severely limit like what you can do with Ob then, like the rest of his army. But like I generally like to use the Scions and the Restless Zombies, so that, and they're kind of weak, they're very mediocre squads, so that usually means Ob is taking most of the turns, and he can be, the opponent can force him to take some really disadvantageous positions, especially if you're dealing with ranged figures. He's hard to use when, like, I think he can generally slaughter range 1 figures and range 1 fights. He's generally pretty good, but when he has to deal with ranged figures, it tends to hamper him quite a bit, which is why I think he's usually in this area. Alright, up next we have Chandra. I'm going to put her in decent. Probably below Ob. She's average to below average in stats, if you ask me. Just in pure stats alone. Now, her ability, like double attack certainly makes up for her having 3 base power, which is kind of weak. What's the other one? Superheated. Superheated is okay. I think most games, like I end up using Superheated 1 time. It's only good for picking off a figure that like you missed the kill by 1 damage, and it's like, and you just want to dump a spell and kill the creature. More times than not, though, I just want to play a red spell for the actual red effect and not to just discard it to deal 1 damage to a creature. That's usually far weaker than what most red spells can do. Double attack synergizes really well with a lot of red spells. Chandra's Fury. Chandra's Fury is an easy one where she's +1 power while not engaged. Burn at the Stake is pretty good too, at least against creatures, when you declare a creature type. Nahiri's Machinations is kind of similar, except that requires you to be in melee combat effectively, you know, when you're attacking an adjacent figure. But it still allows you to, again, like if you run up and punch something with Chandra, you get to roll 4 attack twice instead of 3. Red creatures, they're all decent. Fire Cats I think are very good. I like Haste a lot. Mad Prophet also helps against like the heroes builds. You got the insane like spells like Fire Breathing, Power of Fire, Stoke the Flames, Twin Flame. Like Red has a lot of stuff going for it that like I only put Chandra in decent because she's quite swingy and that like she can be quickly killed sometimes and or her creatures can be quickly neutered. But often you're going to get at least one chance to put a ton of damage into the opponent. Whether it's like via Fire Breathing, Seize the Day, Twin Flame, or like her double attack. Like you're often going to have 1 or 2 turns where if those turns pan out for you and like your attack rolls go well, you're going to win the game. But on the other side of that, that also means that if those attack rolls go terrible for you, you're probably going to lose the game because if you don't kill the key targets like ASAP, they're going to slaughter your rather low life and low toughness figures. Like Phoenixes, they kind of just, they keel over and die. Bloodline Nobles are just kind of junky. Even the Fire Cats, 2 life and 4 toughness is okay, but it doesn't take much to overwhelm the Fire Cats, unfortunately. And 2 life makes it kind of hard to just take lots of disengages and run straight at the enemy Planeswalker. I think Red, or at least Chandra herself, is quite dependent on the dice because like you're constantly stacking additional power and you really need critical attack rolls to hit and deal big damage, like especially when you're using Twin Flame and Seize the Day. On to the next one. On to Arlinn from the green-red mix. And after I just ragged on Chandra, maybe this is a shocker, maybe it isn't. Absolutely top tier. I think this is my choice for the best Planeswalker in the game. So Arlinn Cord alone isn't really like, her figure alone isn't super powerful. She's the absolute most frail Planeswalker at 6 life and 3 toughness. 5 move is also not that good. She does have 7 range, which is pretty good. Like, it's tied for the best range. 3 power is not super good. But then you have, like, Archmage's Assault as an ability, which is, like, at the end of her turn, you get to deal just 1 true damage to any figure within 7 spaces. That's pretty decent. That's a pretty decent ability. Not like, ultra high tier, but I would say it's better than an average ability. In that, like, you can kill your own creatures. Like if you want to use Pyroclasm and it kills your own creature, that allows you to trigger Archmage's Assault, at least if you took a turn with Arlinn when you did that. Let's talk about Transform. So her crappy move and toughness, which I think are kind of her 2 key weaknesses, they're pretty much alleviated, and her low life, but low life is alleviated by Green's Bountiful Harvest, which you should probably include in most Arlinn decks. Low move, low toughness is pretty alleviated by Arlinn transforming into the wolf. Also, you get access to Howl, which could arguably be one of the better abilities in the game. Howl says that when Arlinn deals combat damage on her turn, you get to place a +1 power counter on one of your squads. When she has access to things like Kessig Rangers and Fire Cats, and even the Elf Rangers to an extent, this is a no-brainer, like, stupid overpowered ability. Part of the problem is that Arlinn needs to move into melee range, and even at 6 life, 4 toughness, she's not extremely sturdy, so you have to be careful with where you place her. But it's very easy for her to deal combat damage when you have things like, well, first her base 5 power. Her high move means she's probably getting to high ground, and if she isn't, you have things like Nissa's Expedition, which could help you move up into high ground. You're not taking LEAs in that case either. You get stuff, you get Leaf Arrow. Did I already say Groundswell too? Like, you could sacrifice Leaf Arrow for +2 power, you get Groundswell for +3 power, Predatory Strike if you have high ground for even more power. Alright, the mixture of red and green though, so enough about Arlinn. Red and green is just busted. Titanic Growth and Twin Flame alone pretty much propel the combination of red and green to insane tier. Like, Titanic Growth, Twin Flame, Seize the Day. Because literally, unless you're blue, that combination is pretty much unpreventable. Like, it's pretty much unpreventable by any color except blue. And even then, with like Primeval Light and other other clever play, Arlinn can get around blue, blue's counter spells and shit. You can get a Fire Cat like directly next to an opposing Planeswalker by just summoning them like on Arlinn's turn. Summon a Fire Cat somewhere in like a random spot where they won't have to run through a bunch of engagements, but so that they can at least walk around and hit the Planeswalker. Since they have that high move, like not only do you get to summon them up to effectively 6 spaces out because they're double space, but then you get to play Seize the Day and take a full move with them. If you dump Titanic Growth and Twin Flame on the Fire Cat and you get to attack an opposing Planeswalker, you're likely just going to kill them with that. Like 6 dice along with Intense Strike and Twin Flame. I think what is the average? The average is like 7 hits for like the average 6 life Planeswalker. Like you're fighting like even Liliana, Jace, Kiora, like almost every Planeswalker has 6 or 7 life. So if they blank out or only roll 1 shield, they could die. Like on the average roll, they're this close to death, where in that, like, literally that just means you can attack them with Arlinn at range if you want, or like use Pyroclasm to finish them off. There's so many ways. There's just so many ways that Arlinn can kill you. It is unreal, and it's almost completely unpreventable in a lot of cases. Kessig Rangers are also just like another. You use Snare of the Skies, Twin Flame, and you double attack with one of them. Like you get to attack at 7 range. There's almost nothing most Planeswalkers can do to stop it. Again, other than blue. Green and red have so many dumb spells, and green having the range, and then red having like the obscene power. It makes defending against Arlinn extremely hard, and that her threat range and her figure's threat ranges are also typically going to be better than yours. Paths Revealed helps with that too. Paths Revealed, Snare of the Skies generally make her figures have bigger threat range than yours. So she's extremely hard to deal with. She's extremely hard, especially her squad-centric builds, extremely hard to deal with. I'm going to stop, move on. We're going to move on to Nissa, the mono green Planeswalker and the last on our list. I hesitate to call her absolute top tier, so I'm going to put her high good with the potential to be the bottom of top tier. I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if she's better than Sorin. I do think she's better than Nahiri. She's probably really close with Sorin, so I kind of like this right here. As I mentioned before, I think green is the best color, so this should be a no-brainer that a mono green Planeswalker should, would score up here. 7 life and 4 toughness puts her at the same survivability as Nahiri, and again, that's pretty good. She doesn't have the whole high ground, +2 toughness that Nahiri has. But she has much bigger range, and in my opinion, access to a better color in green. So let's put a little asterisk next to Nissa's move in that, an asterisk next to her move and her rage in that, like, you can attack and then run away, or you can of course move towards your opponent and move 3 spaces closer towards them, or towards whatever objective you want, etc., etc. So sprint, just very useful. Like range 1 figures they very rarely can touch her without her getting like 2 or 3 or even more shots at them first. Her low offense, so her low base power, I think also keeps her in good instead of top tier. Like if she had base 4 power, I think I would be heavily inclined to put her top tier. But her base 3 power can really hold her back until you've drawn Leaf Arrow and or Predatory Strike. Like you absolutely need one or both of those to really supplement her offense so that she can really like contribute as the figure that's moving and attacking a lot. She's very good in the end game, which is a very good thing to be good at as a Planeswalker. I think that's why Sorin is up here. It's because oftentimes players are summoning their creatures, walking their creatures to kill each other, and then usually after those like 1 or 2 or whatever creatures left, it's generally up to the Planeswalkers to do cleanup. So having good survivability and having like a really good high range endgame where you can do a lot of shots without being retaliated against, and or I guess control where the endgame battles occur, this makes her just really good as a cleanup figure. Additionally with that is that you can generally tend to almost guarantee that you're going to have Leaf Arrow or Predatory Strike in your hand by the end game, because as turns go by you should be drawing into those cards. So it makes her endgame generally, like her role as an endgame figure, very good, especially as a Planeswalker. Access to green, Sarcastic Rangers plus Titanic Growth kind of just murders a lot of things. Snare of the Skies helps with that. Pulmaroots are pretty decent as a fighting force. Like, Paths Revealed are pretty good on the Pulmaroots to really get them into the action quickly. It significantly expands their rather crummy, 5 move plus 1 range, threat range. Elf Rangers are decent. They're too similar to Nissa for me to really like to use them with Nissa very often. They're decent enough in the end game as well, if for some reason Nissa died really early. I think that about covers it. Altogether, I think Nissa is, yeah, pretty good. Leave your comments below. Tell me what you think of my tier list. Tell me how much you like my Gideon tier. Check out the description, please. You'll find links to the Discord and to the templates for TierMaker, as I mentioned. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. Make your own tier list, and let's see how we compare. We'll see y'all at the Discord. We'll see y'all in the next video as well.